watched Nintendo, man, my thumbs were always sore. We stayed up past midnight, beating every score. Now I'm almost 21, playing evermore.
All right, welcome back to Beaveman on the Dock. I am the Beaveman, as always.
I'm still the doc.
He's still the Doc, and we are here with you in this lovely country, state, whatever you'd like to call it, that I call Michigan, which is fucking freezing. But that's
I call it home.
You call it home. I call it fucking cold. Yeah, so I think it's supposed to snow or whatever. I don't know. I know my fingers are turning purple.
Yeah, they're talking about like 40 inches in California or someplace over there.
What?
Yeah.
40?
Some massive
40 inches.
cold front with, yeah.
Oh, okay. And if anyone wonders what that crinkling noise is, that's Doc's leather jacket. He thinks he's the Fonz. And for those of you listeners who don't know the Fonz, I just feel really bad for you. All right, so I'm gonna hop right in because I'm super excited. Let me tell you a little story. What was it? I think we mentioned. I asked you if you knew anything about the Hollow Earth on one of the podcasts because you said something about flat earthers, and I said, "What about the Hollow Earthers?" And you were like, "What?"
Yeah, I never quite heard of it.
So yeah, there's folks out there who believe that this planet that we walk upon is hollow.
Now, we're trying something. Well, I guess I shouldn't say we're trying it. We're doing this the way we normally do. B-Man does all the research, and then I just react based on what I know. Or think I know. However you want to see it.
Somehow or other is going to come down to godness somewhere or other. You'll work that in some ways.
It comes down to me and my leather jacket.
So basically what we're saying is, despite the fact that I am a professional person and busy as fuck, yes, I end up doing the majority of the fucking research, unfortunately for me. Not that Doc isn't busy also, but yeah. Okay, so here's the deal though. So the Hollow Earth. What I did was I went on to Gramazon and looked to see if I could find what would be considered the biblio of the Hollow Earth community, I guess, and found this book called The Hollow Earth. You guessed it, The Hollow Earth by some dude. Who's the dude? What's the dude's name there?
Oh, shit. Raymond Bernard.
Raymond Bernard, who's got a couple of fancy definitions after his name of his various degrees that he has from said universities, wherever. I believe that book was published in 69. Yeah, 1969. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to kind of describe this concept of the Hollow Earth. And I am going to need some of Doc's expertise because I'm assuming you know a little bit about navigation.
A little.
I would hope so. My background in navigation, of course, is mostly directly from the Army. And to me, that's a perishable skill. So most of the things that I would normally have done on the ground, Doc can kind of speak to on a larger scale because he was a boat person.
Well, it's been a while since I've operated a maneuvering board and a sextant.
Well, you got at least a good concept of what I'm going to ask you about. So a couple things that I just want to ask you about first is this. Okay, so here's my understanding. When I was in the Army, using our compasses back before we had the gigantic GPSs, which we had just before when I got out, we had some pretty big ones. The needle that points north points to the essentially north of the Hudson Bay, correct?
North
in Canada, where the large iron ore deposits are. So that's like magnetic north.
Actually, they've already shown that it's moving. What was it? The first trip that they made to the North Pole, they found out was not the actual first trip because they missed it.
Well, I'm just talking about magnetic north.
Well, there's geographical north.
I'm not talking
magnetic north.
That's what I'm trying to do. First, I'm just discerning between the two. When I'm talking about magnetic north, when we say where does the compass needle point, I was always taught that it points to the Hudson Bay, which is in Canada. That's what magnetic north is because there's large iron ore deposits there, and that's where the magnetic north actually points, which is different from geographical north. Geographical north is, I don't know, however far from magnetic north.
Right. Well, the magnetic north is still shifting by as much as like 10 miles a year.
Well,
at
even
this
if it
rate.
shifts. Well, we know that because of the UTMG, Universal Transverse Mercator Grid System. They show that
Right.
land, as we know, it shifts, and then the maps have to be adjusted accordingly. Whatever. The bottom line is the needle would still point. It doesn't matter if it shifts or not. It's still going to point to that magnetic north.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So no matter what, it still points to that, which we know is.
There are places where exceptions are made, but they're few and far between. So we'll leave those for another conversation.
Which is hence, like, if I was navigating, for me personally, because of how the magnetism works with the compass needle, and this may seem boring to people, but there's a reason why I'm saying it, okay? Which is why we never navigated with our compass on our M16. You didn't set it on in there and go, oh, because it would be a little bit screwy.
Well, if you fired off a couple of shots, it could temporarily magnetize the barrel and could throw off the...
Well, even any type of metal could actually throw off the magnetic needle just a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's why we wouldn't put the two things next to each other. So in general, what I'm saying is magnetic north, for people who don't understand it, is different from geographical north.
Absolutely.
So however much distance, and that's going to vary from place to place, time to time. When people talk about the North Pole, that is not where the compass needle points. It does not point to the north, quote, there's not a little pole. There's not a little pole in the Arctic that it looks like a candy cane, specifically, that is the definitive point of true north or the North Pole geographically.
Actually, there may not be today, but at one point, somebody actually did go up there. After it was almost 70 years after they identified the difference between the geographic and the magnetic poles, they traveled to the actual pole and put a pole in there.
Well, yeah,
just to mark the spot and say they did it.
I guess what I mean is that pole is not. I guess what I'm saying is it's not a natural landmark. There's not an actual candy cane pole that was sprouted on the Earth, and that's what we call the North Pole.
Maybe there should be.
Maybe there should be, but like you said, it does shift, and we know that it shifts by varying degrees, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So here's my understanding, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, because like I said, we are a couple idiots just giving our opinions on shit. I suspect that because we break everything down geographically, based on equatorial lines of latitude and longitude, if you're talking about geographical north, it's as if you held a basketball in your fingers and you put one at the top and one at the bottom, and that's your north and your south poles. And the lines of latitude and longitude are based off of that in the equatorial line, like a ball.
Correct, but the geographical North Pole is based on the actual axis of the Earth in relation to the sun.
Okay.
So that's how we measure the tilt of the Earth and the seasons.
And then the lines are based off of that.
Correct.
Okay.
So to where the magnetic north, I don't think that when the magnetic north changes, it actually alters anything in relation to the Earth's rotation around the sun. But, who knows? Who knows? Okay. It could.
So that's our base understanding of geographical north and magnetic north. So we're discerning between the two. So here is a little bit. Now I'm going to describe to you the hollow earth theory or concept as I understand it from this book. Okay? Prepare yourself.
Okay.
The Earth is not a sphere.
No?
Per se. It is actually more shaped like a donut. So there is... Actually, if you were to imagine... You know those donuts that Meyer has, the frozen ones? Remember those ones? Those are super delicious ones that are kind of the round... They're not like a true... Like a donut. They kind of look like a muffin, but they're a donut. They're round.
You're thinking like a bun cake or...
No, those are they're donuts.
Oh, donuts.
They're donuts. You remember the ones I'm talking about? The ones that are frozen. They look like a ball, and you pop them in the microwave for a few seconds, and they're super greasy. Did your parents ever buy those?
No, maybe not.
Oh, they're super delicious. Anyway, so it's round. Okay, it's not more flat like a donut is, but it's more like a ball. So imagine, if you will, the Earth is like a ball, but at the top and the bottom, there's a section missing that goes straight through. Okay, so there's your opening at the top, and there's your opening at the bottom. Now, on the inside, all the way around the inside of the ball, if you can imagine on the inside of the ball, is covered with landscape, rivers, oceans, etc., etc., etc. And in the very middle of that, there's either nothing or there's a tiny sun. Oh, there's a tiny... It's hard for me to even say that. There's a tiny sun.
What you're describing sounds an awful lot like what they called a Dyson sphere. Basically, it's a structure built around the sun. Imagine right around the orbit of the Earth, a giant dome that encompasses the entire sun, captures 100% of the energy coming from the sun to utilize in any way. So basically, as long as the sun is there, this dome rotates around the sun, but encompassing the whole thing, and people allegedly would live on the inside of this dome.
Okay. So that's sort of like that. Okay. So if I wanted to, in other words, if I was flying from Canada or whatever, and I'm going to head towards the North Pole or the region of the North Pole, which is the Arctic, correct? Okay.
Okay.
Covered with ice, etc.
Well, today.
Right. And we're headed up there, and I should be able to go from my point of origin, head north, and then continue. Then after I hit that true north area, I start to head south, and I'll hit whatever's on the other side of that position. What is it? I don't know what would be there because I'm not a geography major, but theoretically I should fly over lots and lots of ice until I get to the nearest landmark, which, let me see, if I left from Canada, let's say I left from Canada, I headed straight north, and then I headed to the North Pole, and I headed from the North Pole south, I should hit Russia.
Somewhere in Russia.
Okay, basically, let's say if I left from Michigan and headed straight north, I should come back down in either Russia or Asia, kind of in that area, or something like that. Okay? What they're saying is that somewhere out there in the middle of that all is a very large area that is actually a giant opening. And through that opening, there is a very warm climate, not a temperate climate like ours here in Michigan, but a warm subtropical climate where, there's multiple flora, fauna, ancient creatures still live there, and there's there's a large civilization of humans there as well.
And this hasn't been spotted by satellites. Why?
Oh, well, let me get to that.
Oh, okay.
In due time. First, let's just see that I'm understanding the structure of this planet. So if you can imagine yourself a rather portly expanded donut with a hole at the top and a hole at the bottom with no creamy filling.
It's like an empty snowball, man.
So here's the deal. If that's the case and you have the technology, theoretically you could enter from the North Pole and come out at the South Pole. So you could enter through the Arctic, come out through Antarctica. If you wanted to make that little journey.
So, if you know how when you were really, really little, like, first, second grade, whatnot, people used to make jokes about, if I dig a hole deep enough, I can come through in China on the other side.
Right.
So in this theory, if you dig a hole deep enough, you jumped into it, where would you fall to?
Australia. Right? You would come out at the Antarctica, and you could kind of take a little jaunt over to New Zealand, Australia, South America, the tip of South America, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a geography major, but basically.
South Pole is colder than the North Pole. A lot colder.
Well, according to this, both of them have really nice arid areas that you can kind of hang out in and get nice and warm and toasty. So this book was written, like I said, let me see, I don't know when it was written, but the publishing date is 1969, as I said, by this brilliant man, Dr. Bernard And what he also talks about is how there was a couple guys who are very early on said that they're the ones who discovered the North Pole, which you can't discover the North Pole anyway. They made it the furthest north, and basically where they made it furthest north, I guess if you made it to the North Pole, then your compass would go screwy because what has it got to point to anymore? I guess if you took one step off of it, then it points back behind you. But so they made it the farthest north. This was their claim. And this would have been, let's see, in the 40s or 50s, I think. 40s or 50s when they would have made it there, or when they made these claims that they made it to the North Pole. Maybe the 30s. Yeah, I think it was the 30s.
Maybe,
so both
maybe
of them
this,
were proven.
maybe this was based. Maybe they're talking about the guy who first went there, who only thought he was at the North Pole when he really wasn't.
Well, interestingly enough, both of these say that the two people or the two gentlemen who claim to have made it to the North Pole had no. They were both basically proven that they were wrong. That they went further north with their Eskimo guides, not meaning to be insulting to the Inuit people, but it says Eskimo in this book. They both made it there, but neither one of them could prove that they actually made it there. There was some really crazy claims one of them made. One of them claimed that he was actually traveling 20 to 25 miles a day in the Arctic by dog sled, and one day he actually made it 40 miles in a day.
It's all downhill, right?
By dog sled, which most of the explorers at that time agreed that was pretty much impossible. Because
20, 25 miles. That's pretty. That's
in
moving.
the Arctic.
That's
in
moving.
The Arctic, yeah. I would say that's bullshit. Period. Even if I heard that today, I'd say, wow,
those are like
dog
super
sled?
dogs, man.
Yeah, super dogs. Clearly not having any rough terrain whatsoever. So essentially, it seems like both of them were proven completely wrong, that they never made it there, and they might have just been sitting on their ass, or they might have had some other pole up their ass. Who knows? But the point is, they both got kind of lauded for whatever discovering the pole, but they were not accurate anyway. The only thing that I find funny, though, is that they say that they discovered this area, but if the Eskimos were their guides, hadn't the Eskimos already been there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing when people say Christopher Columbus discovered the America or whatever. You know, you can't discover something. Benjamin Franklin didn't discover electricity. They knew electricity was there. He may have figured out the properties of electricity, but he didn't discover it.
Right.
So, yeah, people misuse words all the time. Just go with it. You know what they mean.
Yeah, I know. It's the word itself. I think we just need to change it. We need to leave that discover and well, I mean, I guess you could say you discover the practical application of electricity or the force that is electricity. Yeah, we could get into that all day
He
long.
discovered that if you've got a metal wire tied to a kite and it gets struck by lightning, it fucking hurts.
Right.
That's what he discovered.
What if he just discovered it by rubbing a balloon on his head?
And then sticking it to the wall.
So anyway, this goes on to talk about really what the next big deal here and why these people, not necessarily why do they think that the Earth is hollow, but some of their proof is that they talk about Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, right? So he did a 7-hour flight beyond the North Pole. So it was 1,700 miles beyond the North Pole. And reportedly, according to this, he would have been flying over frozen, icy terrain, etc., correct? If it was in the Arctic. So he should have been flying over that. But according to this book, he reports seeing grass, trees, greenery, bodies of water.
I would suggest that his navigation skills were shit.
And something that looked like a woolly mammoth. So they believe that, and if you think about it, right, if you're flying, because we understand that the curve of the Earth, right, if I'm flying in an airplane, you could dip down into canyons and everything like that, and by your navigation, it's not like you would fall off of anything, right?
Right.
I can understand what they're saying. So if the Earth was shaped like a donut, and you were flying along the donut, and you had gone down into a large opening, you might not notice because of how large it is. So you would still be flying along the terrain of the Earth. Okay, I could understand what they're talking about theoretically in that aspect.
Are you familiar with the term parabolic curve?
Yes, I've heard the term parabolic curve. Yes.
Okay. At least if I'm using it correctly, maybe I'm not as familiar as I should be. But basically,
Well, I don't throw out fancy terms unless I know what they are. So.
Well, normally I would look them up before using them, but I think it's called the parabolic curve, and what they're talking about, if I'm correct, is like if you throw a baseball, the speed of the baseball, the mass of the object, the mass of the baseball, you can predict where the baseball is going to land based on the speed and mass of the object in Earth's gravity. So basically what happens is it begins to slow down, and then it eventually falls. Well, if you get going fast enough, how they enter orbit is it follows the exact same curve. It is constantly falling, but it's moving fast enough to where as it falls, its forward momentum causes it to miss, and therefore it winds up going around.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of where that's at.
And that's where that's at. Well, my interpretation was if the opening is gigantic, if the opening exists and it's gigantic, and I don't know where they come up with these. I don't know how they figured out how big the opening is. I don't know if they're just obviously they're just pulling shit out of their ass, but according to them, the opening at each end is 1,400 square miles. Okay. So if you're at 1,400 square mile opening, you can't see that distance. So if you're following the contours of the Earth, essentially, you wouldn't notice if you drop down into something. I think that's their theory. In other words, it's not like a hole that you can actually see. You're following the contours of the Earth. If he was following here's the problem though. If you were following the contours of the Earth and you really were dipping down into this hole or this cavern or whatever, wouldn't you have some? And I don't know what their technology was back then, but wouldn't you think that their instruments would be a little screwy?
Oh, they'd be toast.
I mean, they do say that if you were down in this if you dipped down into the hole itself, then your compass needle, instead of being horizontal, would become vertical, which also is pretty goofy. Yeah, don't ask me. The needle would point up, or it would be attempting to point up, which we know that on the mechanism that's on the inside of the compass, it's not going to allow much of a tilt. But
well, assuming what you perceive to be land is below you, relatively, then the compass would point north would be south, and no, it should still be the same.
It will still point to the magnetic, it'll still point magnetically. In other words,
yeah.
Which also kind of puts a little hole in their theory, because if it's pointing to the ore deposit or that area of magnetic north, yeah, it might tilt, but as soon as you start going down into this cavern or into this crevice, it's going to point back in the opposite direction. It's not going to point straight up. Anyway, the point is, this is their theory. So if you could not see that 1,400 mile opening or square miles or whatever, if you were following along what we call nap of the Earth, in other words, if you're following the terrain, theoretically you would not notice that you have dripped down into a hole unless you start to see that sun. But
again, okay. How do they deal with satellite pictures and?
Well, we're not there yet. This is 1947.
Oh. I keep forgetting.
This is 1947. This is when Admiral Byrd made his little trip. So
did they document the location of the entrance of Narnia as well? Just curious.
No, because that is in a wardrobe. No, what's interesting here, so this author is bringing up these two other authors who had speculated before also that there was a hole at the top and the bottom, or that's where ancient civilizations at the Atlanteans and all these other different civilizations live.
No, the Atlantic is still the leading theoretical location for the city of Atlantis.
Well, not according to these guys. There's some Atlanteans all over the world.
In fact, I was watching a show about Atlantis just the other day where they were talking about this new tool that they have that lets them map out the bottom of the ocean, like from a satellite. And basically what they've discovered is that there used to be a continent there, and their suspicion is that on that continent was the supposedly Atlantis. And they spread out because they knew that it was coming. And that's why you have all the different tribes of the world, so to speak.
Well, according to these fellas, the Atlanteans or Atlanteans or whatever you want to freaking call them are all over. You can see their influence in many, many areas. Okay, I got a little bit overzealous there and hit something with my elbow. Anyway, back to it.
Damn elbows anyway.
Yeah. So ancient races living inside the hollow earth. Okay, so let me get to some of the science. Let me break down some science for you.
Oh, they got science.
We got some science here, man. We got some science.
It
Now,
must be sociology science.
let me explain this. Let me blow your mind. I assume you've heard of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, icebergs, right?
Like the one that sank the Titanic, for example.
Right.
That was an iceberg.
That was an iceberg. Okay. Icebergs are made of
Ice?
ice.
Just a guess.
And ice is fresh water.
For the record, iceberg lettuce, not ice.
No, and also not delicious or nutritionally
Relevant.
whatsoever. Anyway, so here's some of the science, right? Icebergs are made of ice.
Yes.
Correct? They are made of ice.
We established that.
Ice is fresh water. Yes.
Generally, yes.
Ice is fresh water. Okay, so here's their theory. Now, if you're trudging along through the Arctic, which is mostly composed of ice, and there are areas of open water, when it starts to get warm and they notice icebergs, where do the icebergs come from if they're in open, warm water? How can you have icebergs in open, warmer water, or open water, if you will, if there's no rain and there's no snow?
Okay. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the Earth has this thing called currents. Okay? Mm-hmm. You have air current, and it travels from one place to the other, and you have currents in the ocean as well. And they're all driven by the exact same thing, which is...
you have current jam.
Okay. But it's all driven by differences in temperature on one part from another. And the hot part rises while the colder parts sink. And that creates the movement. And then it spreads out and gives you the currents. Well, what happens is we get some areas of the Earth which are covered in ice all the time because, well, the sun doesn't get there all the time. So you have at the equator, you'll almost never see ice. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's really unlikely. And what happens is as the seasons change, the Earth tilts toward the sun. Some of the ice, like in the North Pole, for example, in that area, melts a little bit, breaks off, the glacier floats off. And the water in that current is relatively cool, so it takes it a while before it melts. And so it can actually make it quite a ways before it becomes an ice cube instead of an iceberg.
Okay, so what they're saying is because the Earth is hollow and there's lots of vegetation, and it's like I said, it's like kind of a subtropical area. They've got warm flowing water. When the warm flowing rivers flow out through the hole into the cold environment that is warm bodies of fresh water hitting the cold ice, the cold ocean, which is salt water, the icebergs are automatically formed because they flash freeze. That gets dumped into the ocean, and that's where you see those icebergs. Yes. And that is also what causes the tidal waves that have been known to have and occur in the Arctic Ocean.
Yeah, because like seismic activity has nothing to do with those kinds of things.
Of course not. It has nothing to do with that. That's why. So it's kind of like if you were, say you had like a little conveyor belt that was going up and it dropped something off the end into some water. That's kind of what it's like. So imagine, if you will, you've got this warm water, then all of a sudden it kind of flash freezes at the top, and you got this nice chunky iceberg, and it falls off and falls into the ocean, and that's where you cut the tidal wave, and now you've got a little iceberg floating in this water.
I would find it more believable if they said that an alien accidentally dropped some kind of alien superconductor and into the ocean near the North Pole, and that's what caused it to freeze.
Right.
That would be far more believable than this.
Did you
flash
say this
freeze.
isn't believable?
Dude, I thought they said they were talking about science.
Well, when warm water hits a very cold environment, don't you know it flash freezes?
No, it does not.
Okay. Anyway, and this was also interesting. You know how we always heard stories about how not ancient people, but a couple of years ago, they were always finding animals in the ice. Like the Siberian tiger, or the woolly mammoth, or whatever, from the Ice Age.
Or what was that movie where they found the caveman?
Caveman.
Yeah, there you go.
So the same thing happens to these poor unfortunate animals that they found frozen in the ice, for example. Back in the 1700s, some dude in Siberia found a giant woolly mammoth frozen in the ice. He chipped it away, took the tusks, and left the rest for the wolves.
What a dick.
Yeah, well, this was in the 1700s, so you can't really blame him.
Now today, if they found that, they could, do what you want with the tusks. I don't care about that, but that DNA, they could actually clone it.
Well, we don't need to do that. I would say maybe it'd be better just to do some carbon dating.
It'd be cooler to find some dinosaurs trapped in the ice that way.
Anyway, so the same thing happened to these poor unfortunate mammoths. So basically, what I'm guessing is these mammoths, for some reason, these rivers, if you're talking about the animals that get found in like the Arctic, so that means that these rivers are going to kind of flow from south to north. And say this woolly mammoth was just chilling out in the river and he got caught up in a fast current that happens to be one of the rivers that flows out to the ocean. He might have fallen in there, and he got flash froze too. So he was frozen right there. And how do we know that that's why we get the science? How do we know that that's what happened to him and that he wasn't really old? It was not a prehistoric animal. It was some mammoth that just happened to get frozen not too long ago, because he had green vegetable material still in his maw and in his stomach. So he wasn't an ancient animal. He was just recently frozen.
Now, if they found all kinds of mammoths around the place, lots and lots, dozens, like an entire herd, maybe, but did they ever stop to consider that maybe that things were getting colder and colder because the new ice age was beginning, and this particular mammoth just happened to find some place that had some food, but it had to cross a relatively dangerous patch of ice to get there. And it might have been the last green bits around. So, of course, it crosses the ice. Maybe it falls through, and maybe it's not deep enough for it to drown, so it gets to the food and then can't get back out. Eventually freezes. I mean, yeah, they got a lot of fur, but
yeah, but it's just like anything else. How quickly does a human body succumb to exposure? And it's not even that friggin' cold.
In the water, very quickly.
Right. And if you're even not here, not in the water, how fast can you succumb to exposure? They peel people off the ground up north who were passed out dead. So you're saying that Mr. Woolly Mammoth probably wasn't taking a swim in the river, fell in, and got caught up in a fast current that happened to push him right out to the colder environment and flash froze him.
Yeah. I mean, as far as getting caught up in a river and carried to a colder area, maybe. But chances are, for it to travel that kind of distance, would have to be, the thing probably would have drowned first.
Well, that's what it's kind of funny about it. When you read about this stuff, I'm like, wow, so was it that the mammoth just happened to decide he was going to go up there? And if you were coming up to that area, you're saying this mammoth are the rivers that strong that they're all getting just sucked up into that all the time? It sounds like more like a suction type issue. But,
well, mammoths are big, and
like he couldn't grab on anything, huh? Couldn't grab anything. And
who knows?
Maybe just kind of try to stick it out.
Maybe they could swim, but my guess is they were really dense creatures and probably not the best of swimmers, unlike elephants today, which actually can swim.
Like, hey, has anybody seen Herbert? Oh, I saw him over there bathing in the river, but I haven't seen him since. Dude, you don't think? Yeah, bro. I think he got sucked back up in the river.
Did Herbert hear a who?
No, he's probably like an ice cube, bro. He's an ice cube. Okay, so here's their additional proof. Now, if you left from, this is back to Admiral Byrd, right, on his famous 1,700-mile flight.
Right.
So if you left from his point of origin and you traveled 1,700 miles in any direction, he never should have seen green forested land. That's also what they say is their proof. He never would have made it to any area that is warm, green, populated by rivers, animals, etc. So, here's the thing, though, with that. Here's my question. Is that accurate? Is that actually what Admiral Byrd said? Because they're saying that he made these statements, and it was like on a radio transmission that he was broadcasting out and everything, and then it got squashed and all this other stuff. And I'm like,
it's difficult to describe because the people that are listening aren't going to be able to see the picture that we're looking at right here.
Oh, I want them to go right out and look up the hollow earth.
But if I'm in a plane and I'm flying here, they're saying that the plane will follow the curvature of this
inside
crescent,
the basketball. Yep.
And you'll never see this side.
Right. Because
so you won't
so
know.
Large. Yeah, you wouldn't know that you flew into the hole.
Okay. You fly over here. Hey, the sun went away. Where the fuck am I? Where's the sun?
Well, see, now the thing is you're going to be able to get sunlight because in the very center of this hollow earth, but this isn't all the theories. This is one of the theories. If he was still getting sunlight and he was following the contours of the inside of the earth, the sunlight that he's getting is actually not from our sun, but from the central little sun that's inside our earth. So he's getting that sunlight. It's just not the sunlight that he thinks that he's getting from our actual sun.
And why wouldn't the gravity from this side screw with the gravity on the other? So when flying through it, you'd go crazy.
Well, as we all know, not as we all know, gravity is the attraction of us to a large body, correct? So in other words, the attraction that we have, the gravity that keeps us here, is our attraction to the earth. So much the same, like if you flew into a large crevice like the Grand Canyon, it's not like you're going to fall over because there's nothing underneath you. You still have the canyon underneath you. So if they go over that hole, even though it's on the inside of the earth, they still have that attraction to the inside of the earth. So it's not like they're going to fall off into nothingness.
Well, again, calculations of gravity are predictable, and I could see how at one point they might have questioned this and thought, okay, maybe this is a possibility, but for anybody to read this and have any semblance of believability, for you to believe it, God, you need help. You really need help. Ranking right up there with the flat Earth theories.
Well,
It's bullshit.
here's the other question: is if you, let's say you read this book, okay, and the ideas inside the book sounded pretty good to you. Yeah, you need help. But aside from that, don't you kind of question where they get the dimensions of the actual openings at the northern entrance and the southern entrance? Where is their body of proof for any of it? Now, I mean, admittedly, okay, this is before satellite imagery.
You said that the opening was supposed to be somewhere around 1,400 square miles, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's, here's 1,400, what they've got up here at the North Pole, or what they call the northern entrance. And then down here at the south, they've got the southern entrance, which is also 1,400 miles, it appears to be.
So what's the square root of 1,400? Somewhere, 320?
God, I don't know. What are you asking me to do
340?
math? I do med math. Don't ask me to do anything more than that. I had to bust my ass to do this calculate to get through this. I've already read this entire book in a couple days, and I'm already a quarter of a way through it the second time. Just for you, man.
Well, 3 something anyway.
Okay.
300 and some miles. So there's a hole basically 340 miles wide.
Okay.
The view, given the curvature of the Earth, is about 20 miles.
Right. It depends on what the weather is.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you're at sea level, you're going to be able to see about 20 miles. The higher you go, obviously, the further you're going to be able to see.
Well, it depends on the visibility again with cloud cover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That too. So I'm still trying to. I think the guy just got lost. He was flying over like Madagascar or some shit and didn't know it.
He would have been really having to take a really weird trip to go flying over Madagascar. But I think that depending on the point of origin, obviously, what they need to do, because these people are morons, if you took your point of reference of where Admiral Byrd left, and you calculated out 1,700 miles in any direction, if he truly headed north 1,700 miles, there's no way he would have flown over a green area unless we all of a sudden had some sort of warming up there. Now, I have heard that at times, of course, when they've done, there's been explorers up there, and there's little pockets of Earth that has warmed. But we're talking tiny pockets. In other words, where no human has stepped on that piece of Earth for the past, maybe 500-600 years.
Because it's been covered with ice.
Because it's been covered with ice. But we're talking about a tiny little spot. We're not talking about a giant terrain or area.
Usually what would uncover something like that is some kind of geothermic activity.
Right.
And it causes a melt.
Right.
Which, again, makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. So, again, though, now what he's saying, although, is the only way that you could have these warm areas or have warm water in the Arctic is because you're actually traveling inside the Earth and you're actually closer to that warming sun, as opposed to there being any type of geothermic activity, underwater volcano, etc.
Or just currents.
Yeah. I mean, there are warm currents, are there not? Okay, so...
Well, there could be... a ways away, there could be an underwater volcano which causes a warm flow, and the current coming over the top of it could wash currents in the northern direction. And, for all we know, hell, that could be melting the polar ice cap. Well, I don't know, but it's a lot more believable than a hollow Earth. I mean, the math alone doesn't support that. For that much of the Earth to be hollow, the mass of the Earth would be so much less. There's not enough mass here in order to create the kind of gravity that we experience, that we can observe around other planets. Not unless those things are all hollow too, but if that's the case, then all of our calculations would be wrong. We never would have been able to use the other planets to slingshot like Voyager into the outer solar system or the interstellar space.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that.
Do they mention math ever?
There's some math in here. There's little drawings. There's little drawings in math. Here comes back to my point, though. Okay. If you read this book now and you thought it had good ideas in it, shouldn't the first thing you do, one, look at what year it was made, look at what type of science we had at that time, and say to yourself, couldn't I just look at satellite imagery and say that that area is covered in ice? Couldn't I just do that and see that there is no giant, 1,400-mile square hole?
Well, the hole, yeah, but the part about being covered in ice, there could be a patch that opened up 350 miles wide and then froze back over again of water. That could happen. Because each year, if you look at the maps, images of the North Pole, for example, the ice recedes and then comes back and recedes, and the whole concept behind global warming is the fact that each time the ice recedes, it's not building back up quite as much as it did the year before, and so the ice cap, they say, is shrinking. Well, in theory, if it receded enough, it could open up a 300-mile hole and then freeze back over. But we haven't seen any holes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, if that happened, though, would you see the amount of wildlife, flowering trees? He said trees. It's not like you're talking about vegetation. They said trees.
Yeah, if it's cold enough, the trees would not rot.
What trees?
If there was, there are trees. There are palm trees in the bottom of Lake Michigan. I don't know if you knew.
Yeah,
that.
well, we're talking about the Arctic.
Yeah.
Why would there be flowering
colder.
trees? Why would there be trees under all the ice? Even if there wasn't, how much ice would have to melt for there to be trees there? We're talking about
to be able to see trees.
Yeah, I mean, they
were there.
When you see those science shows or whatever where they're doing the drilling, you ever see that where they drill down through the ice and they can tell you how old the ice is by the depth they go. They're able to gauge the age of the ice.
Yeah, something to do with the plankton and salt contents. They have ways of figuring.
So how much would you have to thaw to get down to have a full standing tree to corroborate what that report is saying? Not just a full standing tree. It would have to be flowering and green and everything.
Well, I'm not real sure about the North Pole, but there is and on the South Pole there's an actual landmass, and there are spots. There are spots in Antarctica which are estimated to be as much as a mile thick. That's a lot of ice.
Yeah. So here's another thing. So their additional science for this is that animals have been seen to go north instead of go south when it gets colder. So birds, bears, foxes, and have been found farther north of the North Pole, but still looking like they're well fed. So the only way that's possible, according to them, is if they know that pole exists, and that's where they go every year instead of going somewhere else.
Or they instinctively follow the currents and are able to fly much easier on much less energy. Much like a bear knows how to conserve energy by hibernating. Maybe these birds, for example, would know that if they fly during certain types of the year, the currents are going to be going in their favor and make it an easier trip. And so, I don't know. It's a wondrous thing sometimes, some of the things that animals are capable of. But being mysteriously well-fed, maybe they ate well before the trip. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe they got lucky. Maybe they picked just the right time to be able to find food along the way to make the trip. If they didn't, They wouldn't be able to make the trip every year. They'd make the trip and the flock would die out. It'd be over.
So what if this hole actually exists and the satellite imagery is doctored? Because that's the first thing I would do. If somebody told me about the hollow Earth and they really believed in it, what I would say to them is this: go look at some satellite imagery and tell me if you can find this hole.
If it's doctored. If the hole did exist, you would think that they would be saying, they wouldn't hide it. They'd tell the world, hey, look at all this new real estate for us to exploit. Well, I mean, think about what they're doing, what they're getting ready to do on Mars and the moon.
Okay.
And now imagine what they would be able to do with something like that anybody could go to once they knew it was there.
Well, that's assuming that that they don't know about it. But let's say that they do know about it. Let's say they do know about it, and they're keeping it a secret for a specific reason. We haven't even talked about Admiral Byrd's voyage in the South Pole, because he did the same thing in the South Pole, but he went farther.
What kind of bird was Admiral Byrd? Was he a shitbird?
Is that a Navy guy?
Shitbird
was
wasn't.
Explain it right there.
Shitbird was a Navy term used to describe people who were general fuck-ups.
Oh, shitbird is used in all branches.
Oh,
We said
well.
shitbirds too. So that first trip was made in 1947. The second trip, he went further, but this was in the Antarctica, and that was 1956, and he traveled 2,300 miles beyond the South Pole into a new unknown iceless territory not recorded on a map, extending inside the polar depressions and openings that lead to the hollow interior of the Earth.
I have a theory that's more believable than the hollow Earth theory.
He was like Wrong Way Feldman or whatever. What was
It's
wrong
not
with
a-
that guy on Gilligan's Island?
I don't remember.
His name was
But
Wrong Way. He was the guy that landed on the island because he didn't know how to navigate.
think of like the Bermuda Triangle. Some people describe it as being a mysterious place, planes disappearing and coming back years later or whatever. All the weird ghost stories you hear about the Bermuda Triangle. What if, and this is only if you believe in string theory and M theory and the whole multiverse concept. What if that guy discovered a portal that traveled to a parallel universe where that part of the Earth was actually sunny and covered in trees, and maybe that's why the satellites don't see it, because it's a portal. You don't see the other side till you get on the other side.
Well, that's really possible. I mean, that's a pretty good theory, which I'm sure that theory actually probably exists.
It's a less of a stretch than to suggest a hole in the Earth.
Well, okay. How about this also? How about there are holes, but they're not holes, people. Maybe they're just caverns. There's caverns, I don't know why everybody thinks that a cavern has to lead all the way to the center of the Earth, but there are caverns everywhere throughout the world. That's always possible, but it's not something that somebody's going to fly over or fly into, unless it's the size of the Grand Canyon or the canyon that's in Mexico that's like 3 times the size of Grand Canyon.
Or Shia LaBeouf got carried away digging holes.
Yeah, right. Just digging
If you've ever seen the movie.
Right. So this is basically, that's actually not a bad theory, but what we're going to get into more, and not on this episode because there's so much more that I've got to get into, because now we've got to talk about next, and we're not going to make it today, but what next we're going to talk about is the civilizations inside the hollow Earth.
Oh, this has got to be good.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be really good, because we're going to talk about things like the people that live there inside the hollow Earth, and we're also going to talk about the technology inside the hollow Earth. And a little bit of teaser, what if spaceships, space vehicles, flying saucers are actually not from outer space? If you want to have some really good fun, you can go to Amazon and type in Hollow Earth, and you can find which really amazes me. Apparently, you can put anything on Amazon if you really try. You can find a documentary that's about 10 minutes long where a gentleman talks about the hollow Earth, and he shows a satellite picture in black and white of the Arctic, and it has a big black hole right in the center of it. And this guy's convinced that that is the opening to the hollow Earth. It's a very amusing documentary, which for some reason I'm not sure why that guy doesn't understand that that might just be an overlay or,
a shadow.
No, it's not. It's a perfect round circle.
I've seen pictures. What was it on the Science Channel? They have a show called Mysteries of the Unexplained or something like that, and they show things like it looked like there was a car driving on the side of a building, when actually they had a car mounted to the side of the building. And I mean, there's explanation for everything, but in the pictures they look really peculiar. So all you got to do is find the rational explanation. What do they say? Occam's razor, all things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually correct. So,
well, the thing is, I think that I wonder, here's my question. I wonder if bizarre theories and conspiracy theories and all these alternate reality type theories are as prevalent in other countries as they are in the United States. Because it seems like the more time that people have on their hands, the more time they have to sit around and question just the most bizarre shit.
Well, I don't know. A friend of mine, he lived in Britain, died a few weeks back, but he used to tell me that he was convinced that giants actually existed. Fee, fi, fo, fum, grind your bones into bread, and that those stories were based on real giants.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of scoffed at that. I thought that was funny until I started looking into it and realized that the giants were often seen as the products between humans and angels. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I'm getting off the point, but different stories have
Well, I don't want to
meaning.
Spoil it for you, but we're going to kind of touch on that in the next
the
podcast.
giants?
Yes.
Giants and trolls. Hey, maybe that's where the elves and dwarves are, man.
Well, I wish somebody made me a freaking sweet hammer. Yeah, so if you get a chance for a good time, go to Amazon Prime and look up Black Hole at the North Pole. And it's a beautiful little 10-minute video. He's got 1 star. It gets 1 star, and I didn't do that rating. But that would have been a better rating than I would have given it.
You can't give it a rating, because then you couldn't claim that you're being unbiased anymore.
I mean, I've done some research there, but I do recommend that all listeners go ahead and take a look at that and get ready, because on this next episode we're going to dive back into the Hollow Earth, and this time I'm going to talk to you about the civilizations that live inside the Hollow Earth, and we're going to really dive deep into that one. So this has just been a little bit of a taste, but it's such a large topic, it's such a large subject that I really want to give it some justice. You know what I mean? And if you're out there and you're a Hollow Earther and you're listening, thank you for listening. We welcome all people of all levels of mental capacity.
You are way nicer than me, man.
I feel that if the Earth was hollow, it should at least be filled with like Boston cream or Bavarian cream or something like that, because, gosh, that's what I would go for.
If the Earth is hollow, boy, that would make real estate really plunge.
Well, I mean, even if the Earth was hollow, and you can see here the dimensions are that even though the Earth is hollow, it is at least 80 miles thick.
I think the deepest they've drilled is something like 4 or 5 miles. The deepest a human has ever been is somewhere around 2. The temperature starts going up right around there. It starts getting warmer and warmer.
Well, that's because of the sun in the middle.
Yeah, sure. And
Yeah.
people live exposed to this sun on the inside.
Well, if the Earth is, I'm not sure what the diameter of the Earth is, but if you're 80 miles deep, even if the sun was in the center of the Earth, there's a little sun down there. You could still live. You would still be a long ways from the sun and reap the benefits of the sun if you lived on the surface, on the inner aspect of the hollow Earth. Right? You're still equidistant from the sun all the way around. It'd be the same thing. You're going to have mountain peaks. Yeah, we can push you a little bit closer, but it's colder because the air is a little bit, or whatever. Open your mind. Open your mind, man.
It would have to be very dependent on the size of this sun. You ever, like in Spider-Man, was it the one with Doc Ock, Spider-Man 2?
Right.
Yeah, he tried to create an artificial sun.
Basically.
Maybe they succeeded.
Right. Well, this isn't something that somebody created. This was the natural progression of the Earth itself when it was formed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get into that also.
Oh God, you're driving me nuts. Pure craziness, I tell you.
Oh, well, I would like to thank our listeners today for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. We will dive further into the hollow Earth. And as always, even though I'm super fucking busy, I'm going to be doing all the research on that, and I promise you it will be worth the listen. So thanks for listening. I also want to thank the listeners who listen to our extra content of Beaveman and the Daughter. We'll try to do at least one episode a month for you guys. It will also be under the Beaveman and the Doc heading. But you might see a little bit of a different picture there. And that is me with the Daughter talking over various topics. I might even ask her what her opinion on the hollow Earth is. I imagine it's going to be something like this. Well, that's just stupid. That's probably what I'll get.
Yeah, I knew there was something I liked about her. She's got a good head on her shoulders.
So, thanks for listening, everybody. And from me, the Beaveman, I would like to say thanks again and adios, mooch fuckos.
Crickets, bitches.